and my name is Marina Bykova, and I'm from Agile Göteborg. And I would like to welcome you all. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time of your busy days to join the webinar. Our webinar revolves around Agile at scale in general. In particular, the aspects that might be overlooked when scaling Agile in an organization. And here I point at cultural aspects of strategy mapping and business and decision making in uncertain and complex economies. Our speaker for today, Giuseppe de Simone, and he's certified Scrum trainer, certified enterprise coach, certified team coach, and the managing director of Agile to Sweden. Giuseppe has been helping plenty individuals, teams, and organizations become more productive by embracing Agile values, principles, and practices. To avoid distracting you, we have disabled the audio, video, chat, and raise hands for the attendees. So the QA window is available, but if you have a question, so just post it in QA window and we'll answer your questions in the end of the webinar. And before I move the stage to our speaker, I'd like to take you all through a pool, the purpose of which is to get to know you better. So I will launch now a pool, and you can fill in just your roles in it. Wait a moment. Can just make it. So there are different roles in organizations you have, and we are really interested in which roles you have. So now you have Agile coach, product owner, project management, business analyst, developer, and you have 1 to 2 minutes. So please answer which roles you have, and then we'll see your roles in organizations. Great. Perfect. I will give you a few more time. So in a half a minute, I can end the pool. So you will see the results. So I see that most of us are Agile coaches and Scrum Masters. It's about 50%. There are no product owners or product managers. 20% of project managers, 3% of business analysts, no developers and testers. Some of us working in HR and finance, 3%, and 9% managers, and other roles as well, 12%. Really interesting. Good to know. And now I would like to move the stage to Giuseppe, so he can tell you a bit more of what he's doing and about this webinar. So have a nice time in webinar and see you later. Giuseppe?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really exciting to share, this new concept and approach that we have developed at Agile 42 together with Cognitive Edge. So let's start right away. And it's also very nice to be with such a very diverse audience. So let's start. I will share with you organic agility, which is, both is an approach, which is, and organic is both a metaphor and an acronym. And we will explore a little bit more about this. I will not say much more about myself. Marina said already a lot about me. Maybe a few words about Agile 42, who we are. We are kind of an international company that was founded in 2007 in Germany. Now we are like in 10 different countries, and we are about like 70 people, and possibly now like the biggest Agile consultant independent company in the world. And actually, what we're going to share in this webinar is also things that we've first tried ourselves before, teaching others. We usually are used to drink our own champagne, and for instance, I mean, we are a completely self-managed company. We are kind of no fixed role. We have no HR. We have no finance. We have no budgeting. So really, culture is our bigger assets together with people. And of course, we have like 12 years of experience on different customers all over the world. So the concept I'm going to share you today has been built along these years and then conceptualized together with Dave Snowden in the last 4 years, I would say. So I will show you a video first.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Newmore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch. The tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
Yeah, as many of you might have guessed, I'm originally from Italy, so really like, this is an example from my background, but this is just a metaphor to try to understand really like that the world around is changing, and it's changing faster than we think. And usually technology is one of the main drivers in the change. And there is just an evidence that to survive, organization need to be adaptable, flexible, nimble, and resilient in the end. And I want to give you 2 perspectives to understand why is that important. And the first perspective is an outside-in perspective. And I'm starting with sharing you this curve that many of you might know. This is like the market adoption card, or the innovation diffusion card from Everett Rogers. that shows that there is a new innovation in the market, usually it follows a certain curve with different kind of adopters. On top of this, Geoffrey Moore, in his book Crossing the Chasm, showed that actually between the early adopters and the early majority, actually this is not like an S curve, but there is there is a chasm which divide like these two group of potential customers who has different kind of needs and different kind of expectation. And basically this change completed the perspective of companies that on the if we draw this dotted line on the left side, the strategy is to sell to make, so try to convince innovators and early adopters that there is a good in a vision of a new product in order to be able to build it. But then when you shift on the right side of the curve, then you move to a make to sell strategy, which means actually now it's about like to convince the pragmatists that the product has been used by visionaries where the quality was not so good. Now it's kind of has a good enough number of features and good quality to be adopted by them. And that means that company has to shift completely their way of approaching the market, moving from left to right, and usually that requires also a shift sometimes in the structures, in the process use, in how much you're focusing on the quality, etc. And there are two problems with this curve. The first problem is that this cycle few years ago used to be between 20 and 25 years. I mean, the cycle between, starting with an idea of a product, addressing innovators to, ending the life cycle of a product going to commoditization was between 20 and 25 years. This cycles has been reduced to 5-7 years, which means that companies need to be faster in adapting their strategies, their marketing, their development, and their process and tools and culture in shifting to one kind of adopter to another. And that's why, for instance, we see that reorganization are happening faster and faster, usually every maybe 12, 18, maximum 24 months, because they follow this curve. Another problem is that when you are on the apex of this curve, actually you are like the market leader. And according to the apex predator theory to Dave Snowden, actually the companies that are most successful in this area, actually they're also the more fragile, because if they want to be in the market, they need to continue to innovate, so they need to start another cycle. But here, they've been optimizing themselves so much to efficiency and to the existing market that actually find very, very hard to start a new cycle. And that's why many big predators are dying now. And instead, in order to be able to stay in the market, you need to be adaptable and maybe using adaptation strategy like symbiotic strategy, like reusing, addressing the same kind of customer with upselling similar kind of product and create an ecosystem, or what is called an acceptation strategy, which means like addressing with your existing product other kind of markets or other kind of customer groups by adapting the same technology to different kind of needs. So that's one view. It's the outside in view, but let's look also the inside out views, and let's have a look about how we normally achieve results in our company. And we do this by using this pyramid of result, which basically tells us that if we have a company strategy, actually we achieve our vision or our mission by results that happen in the company. But results are a consequence of actions and behaviors of people in the company. But these actions and behaviors are kind of results of our beliefs, what we think, what we value. And these beliefs are formed by experience that we live not only in the company, but the thing, since our brain is a connecting machine, whatever we have been experiencing since our childhood, this makes what we believe and what we are, which actually drives our behaviors, that actually drives our result. So there are multiple interpretations, multiple reflections that can be done by looking at this pyramid. First of all is that, if you just traditionally, in traditional companies, we are used to manage results and actions of people. Of course, this puts a challenge in a fast-paced environment and a fast-changing environment, puts a challenge because if there is one people or a limited number of people who needs to manage action of a broad number of people, this makes any adaptation very, very, very slow. So basically, we need instead to give more autonomy to different people in the company. But of course, the autonomy has also risk that if there is no coherence in the way we act, actually there is a high risk that our actions and our beliefs don't produce the expected results. For that reason, we need to shift the balance towards leading on the bottom part of the pyramid, which means about creating the right experience that shape beliefs that are coherent, that can create actions that are functional to achieve our vision. And from this pyramid, you can also see that not all action will bring to results, and not all belief will bring to the right actions, as well as not all experience will lead to the right beliefs. As we see, is a pyramid, but actually we should try to shrink the pyramid to limit the waste, so that all our experience can produce the right culture, and the culture, a coherent culture that produce actions and results that function to our vision. So this is another call for action to basically changing the metaphor how we see our company, or our organization. So shifting our metaphor from seeing organization like machines, which are focusing on efficiency, which are focusing on structure, which are focusing on processes, and which are focusing also on becoming robust to certain stress from outside, to a more organic metaphor where we see our organization like living systems, where we want instead to build more focus on effectiveness and more resilience as a property, because machines are designed to be robust to certain kind of stress, but how become robust to certain kind of changes from outside environment, but how can we resist to unexpected changes? Resilience is instead the property to be able, whatever stress it happens, to be able to adapt and maybe to recover fast if something hits us. And this is a property only of organic, is a property only of organic systems, of organism. It's not a property of machine, because even though we were able to design a machine that is able to resist to all possible stress from outside, this will be far too expensive and far too complex. So this is not really working. And for this reason, we have developed an approach which is actually called organic agility. And as I said, organic is a metaphor, which I just explained, but is also an acronym that we will explore very, very soon. So, as I said, organic agility is an approach, and then it's an approach based on 4 elements. First of all, is based on a leadership model that we will explore in the end of the presentation if we have time. But the core is built by the 5 organic agility principles, which represent the direction, the support, and which represent the scaffolding that will help organization then to let organization emerge their own practices, their own rituals that will then support and grow resilience. And on the bottom, you have a set of apps and tools that are, helping accelerate the shift towards an organic approach and towards being a resilient company. And this, I will show some of these tools, and explicitly two strategic tools. One is the organization scan, and one is the Agile strategy map. But and these are also digital tools, but there are other tools that are kind of more low tech or facilitation tools that are helping to make the 5 principles concrete. But the question is that why we decided to propose principles and not to propose frameworks. And the reason is back to the metaphor we just described, because actually with structure, companies are very good at creating structures and processes that are their way to become robust, as I said, to certain circumstances. But when you want to become resilient and become able to adapt and to, so to speak, react and recover to any kind of stress, then structures are not good enough, because you cannot create a structure that can protect you from any kind of stress. That's the same as for educating kids. And by the way, kids are living organisms, right? So if you want to educate kids to become grown-ups that are able to find their way in the life that is full of unexpected circumstances, giving them rules and process to follow is not enough, because what happens if they find a different kind of circumstances. So instead, you are teaching them principles like be honest, or respect others, and these are giving the compass and the direction and the support to understand and to be able to cope with the unexpected circumstances. So that's why Edward Deming, Professor Dr. Deming already in the 70s, they understood the fact that and it was valid for the lean approach already, like don't copy the tool, copy the principles. And instead, like we see now in a highly commoditized market of Agile, that companies and people are looking for recipe, are looking for tools, are looking for structure, and actually we want to move away from that approach, and in a way moving to, let's say, to the roots of Agile, which means to be flexible and nimble, and rediscover the importance of principles, as I said, as a scaffolding, so that a company can build their own frameworks and practices from within, and then become more resilient. So first of all, let's discover what is the meaning of the acronym organic, and then we will go through the 5 principles. So organic means organizational resilience, so achieving organizational resilience, which is, as I said, the capability of an organism to react to unknown challenges and volatility by growing autonomy, which means investing in growing people and enable them to act autonomously, to be able to be more responsive to unexpected changes, and by nurturing an interdependent culture, which is what creates the coherence necessary to have the right response to stimuli that are coherent, even though you have a high autonomy in your organization. So let's try to explore these 5 principles that I said are building the scaffolding for helping an organization become resilient. And the first principle is exactly talking about cultural awareness and coherence. Just as a side note, these 5 principles are, also to be seen as a sequence of possible, things to focus in sequence from the most foundational to the most to the most application principles. So really, like, this sequence of 5 principles gives also a possible path to from where you are towards achieving more resilience. So the first is really about increasing cultural awareness and coherence. And what is culture? I mean, culture, we can define cultures like how we do things around here. So it's a set of behaviors, but also of practices and the processes that are accepted and have been established within organization. Actually, there have been many attempts to define culture. Actually, we have found more than 150 different definitions of culture. But regardless, this definition, this attempt to define a culture following different approach, it has been always very much understood that, this culture dimension is very important, is essential, and is essential because this represents the DNA of a company. Think about like something like Total Quality Manager in the 80s that have been, very much successful in many contexts, but 75% of implementation of TQM were unsuccessful. Why was that? The reason was because people, not because of the approach as such, but because people were trying to simply copying tools. And it's the same, with Scrum, how we see around a lot of bad Scrum. And the problem is not Scrum, but the problem is that when you try to introduce something like Scrum or any other kind of Agile practice in a company that has a culture that is not, prepared for that, is like injecting a virus in a non-vaccinated body. So what you get is disease. So what you have to do is to start vaccinating the body to create a DNA which is able to incorporate certain kind of change, and that culture represents really like the DNA. We have seen far many examples like introduction of things like transparency, which is considered by everyone, I think, in this seminar, in this webinar, like something good, has been interpreted in unprepared culture, not as a way to understand what we're doing and be able to help each other and collaborate, but more as this is the umpteenth way the management is trying to micromanage people and to control people. So that's very important. As we said, there are like different definitions of culture and different models. We have been getting inspired and we've been using something which is called CVF, which is Competing Value Framework, which is a very validated way of making your organization aware of your culture. And being aware of where you are, being aware of your starting point is the most important thing to start your journey. And this is something started already in the 70s through few research that will try to understand, okay, what are the parameters that make an organization successful? And they come up with 39 indicators. Of course, you can't do so much with 39 indicators, but what was done by Kim Cameron and Robert Quinn was to take these 39 indicators and put them under statistical analysis. And then, they came up with 4 different dimensions where you can map the culture of an organization. So you have like this 4 dimension kind of creates 2 kind of axes. On one axis, you have on one side like more focusing on flexibility and distraction, and on the other side, more focusing on stability and control. And on the other, the horizontal axis, you have on one side more internal focus and integration, and on the other side more, external focus and differentiation. And by doing this, by creating this axis, then you can actually identify 4 different cultural archetypes. And usually we discover that the culture of a company is a combination of these 4 archetypes. So on one side, you have a cultural type, a cultural archetype, which is very much internal focus and very much focusing on stability and control. So the key word for this kind of culture is actually control. And let's say this culture type is called hierarchy, and the mantra of this kind of culture is, okay, doing things right. And you see like there are different elements in this culture. For instance, the typical leader in this kind of organization is a coordinator, is an organizer, and people in this kind of culture value efficiency and value consistency and control. Then on the upper left corner, you have a kind of culture which is very much focused on flexibility and distraction, but at the same time, very much internal focus. You have a culture type which is called clan. And the key word for this kind of culture is collaboration. And basically, the mantra of this kind of culture archetype is we do things together. And there is, in this kind of culture, there's a lot of focus on people. The kind of the typical leader is a mentor, is a facilitator, and the values is commitment and communication. There's a lot of focus on a human being. I mean, as a drawback there can be that you might have a hard time in getting things done, and so on and so forth. Then on the other side, you have a culture type which is very much focusing on flexibility and distraction and external focus. This is called adhocracy, where the key word is creation, be creative, and basically the mantra of this kind of culture is doing things first. And the typical leader of this kind of culture is an innovator, an entrepreneur, a visionary, and what is really driving these people is agility and being innovative, etc. And then the last one, we have like something that's very much external focus, but having stability and control, and this is called market type, market culture type, and the keyword is competing, and really like the mantra is doing things fast, and the typical leader of this kind of culture is a hard driver and producer, and the people value competing and market share and be aggressive and so on and so forth. And you see this kind of model is called competing value framework because the culture that are on the opposite side, they are really much competing, because you understand where doing things together and doing things fast might be competing for each other, like doing things first and doing things right might be competing with each other. But actually the typical culture of a company is usually a combination of this. Let's make an example. For instance, I mean, this might be an example of a culture profile of a traditional company that's like that is very much of a strong hierarchy-oriented profile. And of course, if we think about the Agile values and principles, for instance, individual interactions over process and tools, or customer collaboration over contract negotiation, you can easily understand that the Agile values and principles are very much on the upper side of this graph. And so basically, a company that has a culture like this struggles very much in implementing, Agile values and principles. So basically, what you will need to shift to create the right environment for Agile values and principles, and a more nimble organization will like, for instance, to shift the culture from where you are now to more such a kind of culture. However, as I said, we got inspired by the competing value frameworks. On the other side, we also believe that this framework, which was basically created in the 80s and 90s, is actually very much influenced by a linear thinking approach. So the whole idea is that basically, if this is your current culture, you can define a desired culture, and then you can do something to move from here to here by filling some gaps. Actually, this is not actually fully true, as we will see also and it's not also possible in every kind of context, as we will see, for instance, in principle number 4. But And one difference is that actually you don't want to have, you might not want to have one single culture, one single aligned culture in the whole your company, because maybe you have in your company different products that are on different sides of the market adoption culture. For instance, I mean, you might have products that are in the sell to make areas, and they actually you would like maybe to have a more innovative, adaptive, and quickly adaptable culture. But if you are in a product that is more on the right side, where you actually make to sell, this is more requires a focus on structure and quality and effectiveness. And maybe if you are in the late majority, that your product is in a commoditized, or maybe not adding so much features, but just maybe handling customer support and maintenance, maybe you would like more, you might benefit more for a culture that is more focusing on efficiency. So basically, you might want to have different kind of culture profile on different kind of part of the organization, or different kind of context. So that's why, you know, the whole idea from the original CVF book, that you have a target customer, a target culture, and you are moving towards that. This is probably you know, a little bit incomplete, a little bit superficial. This is one example from a company called Zipgate, which is one of our clients in organic agility, and showing for them like the importance of making the culture explicit as a first way to understand where you. So as a way to understand where you are, which is understanding where you are is much more important, or is at least as important to understand where you want to go. And by them, you can, you know, try to encourage specific behavior, to have less behavior from the culture you don't want to have, and more behavior from the culture that is more coherent with your business goals. And you can do this by storytelling and role modeling from leaders, and, you know, by ritualizing certain kind of behaviors to make them success stories that are you know, can be repeated and copied by other parts of the organization. However, this was the old way we can make the culture explicit by using, you know, the OCAI assessment from CVF, from Cameron and Quinn. But now actually we have developed a tool which is called organizational scan, which is basically a way to we have developed together with Cognitive Edge, which is basically a way to assess an organization, to scan an organization by collecting micro-narratives about how decisions are made in the company, by, you know, signifying these stories according to certain parameters. In that way, we can have a lot of benefits. And one benefit is that, you know, this is kind of creating a distributed sensing network in the company, which, as opposite to collecting metrics centrally, which usually, you know, has a lot of problem like, you know, bias or even political games, but also try to collect different perspective that allows us also to understand and to also differentiate between the different elements in the CVF. As you could remember from the slide when I presented the CVF, there were like 4 different aspects of a culture: the leader type, the quality strategy, the theory effectiveness, and the value drivers. So the leader type is in a way like describing the leadership behaviors, which might affect, you know, the quality strategy, which might believe like what is how people approach the work in the company, and of course this can create a new story of success that can change the theory effectiveness of what people consider effective in their company, which in the end will affect the deep values. And you can see also, like, you know, from this kind of heat maps, I will, you know, demo the tool later on. You can see also how these different dimensions are overlapping, which can give you an idea how much your culture is coherent or not coherent. So if you have question again, feel free to put up your question in the Q&A tab. So let's move now to the principle number 2. So once you have understand where you are and made your culture explicit and start working on your culture, then this is the second step, is to really understand, create a decision-making process that is coherent. At the same time, even not aligned, because it should not be aligned. You should not supposed to have a decision-making process that is the same in the whole company, but creating a decision-making process that is coherent, and that is able to give coherent answers depending on the context. But the first question is that why decisions are so important? Because we have mentioned decision here, and I also mentioned before decision when I described how we have set up the organizational scan. And decisions are important for many reasons. And one of these is that there is a recent research from Standish Group, I think it's from 2017 or 2018, that showed the effect of decision latency on success of initiatives and projects in company. And they show that, if you have a bad decision latency, let's say decision latencies that is, above 8 hours, so then, only roughly 20% of the projects succeed. But if you have a good decision latency, like let's say around 1 hour, then almost 60% of the projects succeed. So this is pretty much crucial. And then we find in Canevin a framework to give us a common way to look at decision-making process. But before moving on to explain Canevin, I would like to launch a poll to understand how much do we know about Canevin. So I will launch a poll, and I will ask you to answer, how much do you know about the Canevin framework? Okay, there are still a few people not answered, but I think I can end the poll now and maybe share the results with you. So it looks like, we are half and half in this room, like there are between knowing nothing or just heard the terms to have read about it and really have experience using the framework. So yeah, maybe I will spend a few words on Canevin. So let's go back to the so just very quickly, Canevin framework is a sense-making framework. So it's a framework which allows us to making sense of the reality, as opposed to a categorization framework, because here it's not about taking something and categorize according to certain characteristics, but observe the reality and try to make sense of it according to certain parameters. So this Canevin framework has 5 domains, and each domain has a different characteristic. And depending on the domain your problem belongs to, then you might have to use a different kind of decision making. I will talk a little bit more about the 4 main domain. There is a 5th domain in the middle that is called disorder domain, which is a domain where certain problems belong when you are not able to make sense of that specific problem, of that specific situation. So usually problems that are in this domain can be decomposed in several problems which can be make sense of according to the other 4 domains. Actually, this is the Canevin 2.0, which also has some liminal domain, which are on the border between 2 different domains. I'm not going to tell too much about that. And the interesting thing of Kinevin 2.0 is also that it adds some dynamics. So you have a learning loop dynamic. Basically, this is what we will implement in principle number 4. For instance, if you are in a complex domain, then you might want to experiment and then, get back to the, try to implement the learning in a broader scale and go back to experimentation. You have the innovation that creates, it's a loop that requires a shallow dive into chaos. And then you see like obvious and chaotic are very much connected. And, I will explain more about this. Let's go to domain first. Maybe we'll understand better the dynamics after that. So the first domain is the obvious domain. This is a domain where the connection between cause and effect is visible and is obvious to anyone. Like for instance, switching off on and off a light. Like if I push a button, then I know that everybody understands that the consequence will be that the light will switch on or off. And if I push the button, nothing happens, you will easily understand that there is a problem. So when the context is obvious, when the connection between cause and effect is obvious, then you don't even need to do a situation analysis because the situation is just obvious. And then basically, the decision-making process you want to have in this probably in this kind of domain should be no-brain. So this kind of domain should be regulated by routines, by processes, by rules, because everybody knows what to do, and there is only one way of doing things. So this also makes understand that processes and routines and rules are not bad. I mean, they're actually very good and useful in certain circumstances. Then we have the complicated domain. This is a domain where the difference when the connection between cause and effect exists, but it's not obvious to everybody, to anybody, and in order to understand it, an analysis is required. So this is not a domain of best practice. This is the domain of good practices, and experience and knowledge are really king in this kind of domain. So usually the best, a very good decision-making process in this domain is to delegate the decision to a panel of experts, because they have the experience, and then maybe you might want to facilitate this panel of experts to avoid that they get into analysis paralysis. And of course, decision in this context are also validated through peer review. And so that's why you approach this kind of the problem in this domain by sensing, understanding, and doing a situation analysis, which can be done by expert, and then analyzing and then respond as a consequence. The third domain is the complex domain. This is a domain where the relationship between cause and effect can only be seen in retrospective. So this is, in this case, there are a lot of unknowns, so competence and knowledge is not very much useful. And here, diversity is very much important, is much more important, because here situation analysis is distributed. And the best way to take a decision is to, doing a multiple safe-to-fail experiment to probe the system, understand the problem, and then act accordingly. So here, this complex domain, say sense-making, situation analysis, and decision-making are distributed, but it's very important that the direction to decision-making is very much centralized to give us a coherent, to keep coherence in an environment where a lot of unexpected changes might happen. And that's where we can actually leverage the resilience. Again, like cultural coherence will allow us to give to complete a decentralized situation analysis and decision making. And then you have a chaotic domain where you are in a burning platform. I mean, things are very volatile, and there is no relationship between cause and effect. So here, situation analysis is not possible just because you don't have time. There is no time to analyze. There is no time to probe the system. So you have to act and see what happens, and then respond accordingly. So here, it's a very commanding decision-making process. Decision-making is necessary to keep a certain coherence. And here the timing is crucial. So a bad decision which leaves option is much better than not taking any decision at all. So if we go back just 1 second, I want to talk a little bit about the dynamics. So you see, there is this learning curve, learning dynamic that, if you are in a complex environment and you need to have to make multiple safe-to-fail experiment, when you understand and you learn, and there is less known unknowns and more known unknowns, then you are actually moving to a complicated environment. Actually, you can start from multiple safe-to-fail experiment to more deploying things in a larger scale. Or if you see obvious and chaotic domain are connected, then actually there is a slope between obvious and chaotic. And the reason is that usually when we oversimplify things, and that's one of the problems with some of the large scale Agile framework, is that we believe that everything is predictable, and we start creating a lot of structure, superstructure, processing tools, which works very well in obvious domain, and then we fail to understand the complexity and the known unknowns, and then it's very easy to fall into chaos, and that's and recovery is very much expensive. So let's move to principle number 3. Now it's about once you have created coherent culture and establish a contextual-based decision-making, then you can focus on value creation. And let's make just an example. I mean, traditional organizations are organizing metrics. Basically, you have different kind of silos that are, and different kind of projects that are competing from the same resources to create a certain value for the customer. And there is a lot of handovers and coordination. Here, the focus is very much on utilization and not on value delivery. And that's because this is coming from a traditional way of thinking, or a machine metaphor where you want to use economy of scales. But the resilient organization is more about understanding the value for the client, and then try to understand what provides, understanding who your customer is, understanding what is the value for the customer, and then identify solution and products that provide that value, and then organize around them across the organization. In this way, you optimize for value delivery and time to market. And there are many tools that you can use to focus on customer value, for instance, and these are tools that we have developed that have become tools of organic agility. For instance, opportunity canvas are a way to understand the customer value and create context. And then, once you create this, you can organize and have stable structure that are as autonomous as possible to provide value to a certain customer group. These are examples of opportunity canvas, and as well as you want to visualize the work of the different stream in a portfolio Kanban board, which allow you to visualize and to create a better flow. And this is an example of SIPGate about all the product managers standing in front of a portfolio Kanban board to discuss and prioritize according to what is the highest cost of delay, not of how we can be as cost effective as possible, how we can optimize resources. And these are other examples of So you see, like, how organic agility is an approach where multiple tools can also become way to implement a certain principles. And as you might see on our website, organicagility.com, actually we are creating a partner program where people that are interested and are in find in a way like resonate with this principle can actually become themselves organic agility coaches and maybe complement the existing tool with their own tool as long as they are coherent with the principles. And yet another way to visualize and to organize around value. Then we have the fourth principles, which is about validate changes in small increment. Now then we understand the principle number 2, and we understand that in a complex domain, and actually change is difficult and confronting. Any change is actually complex, because if we are doing something new, we don't know exactly what to do, and we don't know exactly how to do it. So there are a lot of unknown unknowns, which makes the domain complex. On top of that, we have people involved that are complex by definition. So so now I would like to break another time and launch maybe another poll. I want to understand a little bit what is your experience about change. So what is the biggest challenge you encounter in your current change initiative, whether it's an agile transition or not? And you are allowed to use multiple choices. Okay, I will end the poll now, even though if you and share results, you see, like, there are kind of many things, and many of you have chosen multiple elements, and the top ones are definitely like culture dots with desired change, and that's why the first principle of organic agility is about creating culture awareness and coherence, but it's also a lot about unclear direction. So it's both about lack of understanding where you stand and lack of understanding where you want to be, and as a consequence also a lot of other unclear strategy, lack of experimentation, and too much bureaucracy. It's are following. So, and actually, this fourth principle is actually trying to complement the other principle, try to address exactly this kind of problems. And the problem is that the traditional approach to change management doesn't recognize the fact that change is complex, actually. So usually we have some kind of, in the best case, we have some kind of strategy, we have some kind of goal, but actually what we try to do, we try to design the new change up front. And then what we do, we try to document it heavily, and usually this takes many months. And then we are going to roll out the change, and then we're going to educate people and pushing the change and oblige people to follow new process. Sometimes this is the new agile process, and I've seen this also for many agile transformation. Then people are left alone to implement to cope with the new change, and then there is a lot of problems, a lot of conflicts, a lot of frictions, and then you have tried to fix the issues. Actually, and it's focusing on standardized things before even trying if they work, before even experimenting things. And that's, as I said, that's also what happens with many scaled agile framework. But actually, the organic approach to change management is actually, again, trying to validate the change in small increments and try to use the right approach in a complex environment, which is basically like make an hypothesis, try multiple safe to fail experiment to validate those hypotheses, and then take the learning and act accordingly. So basically, we have like continuous iteration of design and rollout and documentation. You see, like you first roll out things and then you document it. So basically, you try to stabilize things and then standardize as a consequence, and you iterate along the process by having a coach supporting, one or multiple coaching supporting the whole idea. And in order to support these principles, we have created a tool called Agile Strategy Map, which in his original idea has its roots in the theory of constraints and in the Peter Senge work, in the system thinking, but also in the wheel of team learning. And recently we have incorporating the Wordley maps concept. And Simon Wordley has been very much successful in making us understand that a lot of things that we consider a map in our context, they are actually not a map, because they lack an anchor and a clear and a direction and the positioning. For instance, we talk always about roadmaps, but what we call roadmaps, or what traditional organizations call roadmaps, they are not actually roadmaps, because they're not giving a direction and there's a way to orienter, but they're just like one tunnel from here to where we are supposed to be in 3 or 5 years from now, without any option. So basically, this Agile strategy map allows us to define a goal, which gives the direction, which gives an anchor. And then the first step is to acknowledge that a company that exists has been successful thanks to certain things. So the first step is to identify what we call confirmed success factors, which are the things that have helped the organization to be successful so far. And then we move at identifying in the future what will be the potential success factors, so things that might help us getting closer to where we want to go, and these are hypotheses that need to be validated through multiple safe to fail experiment, and by identifying necessity conditions, that are the things that we need to put in place, either to validate the hypothesis, or in this case to keep something that was successful, or in this case to even start an experiment. And then we take the learning of the experiment, which validate or invalidate a PSF, and then we evolve the strategy along the time. This tool has been started as a low-tech tool, and these are example, of evolution of strategy at Siemens in this case, or Siemens in this case, this is all Siemens. And then this is another company, Billiger, Mietwagen, and now this has become a digital tool that I will show very, very soon. So, but first let's go to the 5th principles, and the 5th principle is about like optimizing the flow. And then you see, like in the progression, now once we identify what works and what doesn't work, then we, from the learning loop, in the Canadian learning loop, we move from a complex domain where we experiment and learn by sensing the system and probing the system through multiple safe to fail experiment. Then we move to something that is more in the complicated domain. Then we can actually use techniques that are, for instance, very in common with the lean thinking to optimize what we have discovered as working in our context. And for instance, I mean, this is kind of, again, like this kind of principle would like to allow us to move from the traditional plan-driven organization where you have, maybe multiple projects running in parallel and projects that possibly share the same people and the projects that have dependency from one another, because we're not focusing on the customer, just focusing on internal efficiency. And actually what happens is that we create a lot of dependencies that must be managed, and this must be managed by synchronizing the project, so that you usually end up in a maybe team reporting meeting, project reporting meeting, program reporting meeting, and you have artifact like project anatomy, try to identify dependencies, and this create a lot of overhead, a lot of waste, and you see like people are busy just by the dozens of meetings they are supposed to participate just to keep us in sync with each other. And on top of that, sharing people between different projects makes these people even less productive. And then we try to have a release at the end. So, sorry. So we have, fixed scope and fixed state. What we have in a resilient organization, instead, that you have an organization which is based on teams, then, once you discover what works for organization, for instance, what are the value streams in your organization, then you have to set up and develop good teams in your organization and grow good teams that can be, that pool features. These teams are as autonomous as possible and pull and deliver feature one at a time, so that we can, and then they try to interact, like in this case, only if necessary, and the relationship between teams and the dependencies among teams are handled by the teams themselves. So in this case, you have a variable scope and variable date. So what you try to do in order to optimize flow is to, in a pull system environment, try to desynchronize the development team, or try to remove all the unnecessary synchronization point that's going to make the delivery faster and reduce the cost of release. And here we have example how you can achieve this, and then you have all the things that are most common in an agile world, like by maybe automating testing in a short cycle, release incrementally. You can reduce the time to market and have higher quality. This is an example from Ericsson in Italy, and this is not only software. This is like a solution which integrated the hardware, embedded software, and application software. And maybe two examples of continuous integration and delivery that might be tools and methods to implement these things. And in Bubble, they managed to switch from a big product release to incremental change and to release every feature on all platform. And the Siemens, again, and this is healthcare systems. By focusing on one feature at a time, this allowed to speed up and optimize the flow. So it's 20 minutes before the end of the presentation. So I would like to stop here and then leave the leadership aspect a little bit out. You will get anyway the material, so you can actually look at it. I would like to show to do a demo of the two tools I mentioned before, namely the organizational strategy map, the organizational scan, and the strategy map. So basically, this is what is called Organic Agility app, and this is something, as I said, that we developed together with Cognitive Edge. So this is based on SenseMaker, and This is the Organic Agility app that at the moment has basically 3 tools. One is to record decision, to implement, as I said, like the distributed sense-making network in the organization. And then you have this part, which is a kind of dashboard, which shows like heat maps. I'm going to explain it again later. And then you have the strategy map. And this is an app that is going to, probably being populated soon with more tools, like, for instance, tools for team assessment or for leadership assessment that are coherent with the leadership model that we have in Organic Agility, and so on and so forth. So, but let's try to see in practice how does it work to document the decision. As I said, we're going to build a cultural profile of the company by collecting decisions by anyone in the company, by collecting decision that either the person has taken or the person has been affected by. And this can be any kind of decision. And you go to this. So basically, you first of all record a short story. So let's say, for instance, we have decided to run an Organic Agility webinar together with Agile Gothenburg on Zoom. Okay, so this was a decision that was taken, and let's put a title. We'll call it OA webinar, and then you start, first characterizing this decision. So, what kind of decision was that? I would say this is more a strategic decision, and we take this decision, let's say, within the day, and how the decision was communicated. The decision was communicated towards a tool, through email, and the decision was made by a group of people, basically myself and of course, a group of people in Agile Gothenburg. The decision made me feel very positive. This kind of decision are made every now and then. So this is the first categorization, and then you try to make sense of the story through certain signifiers. And you see, like, this is a different way of understanding what's going on, which is different from a traditional poll, because a traditional poll, the risk of bias is very high, both in the way you set up the poll, but also in the way people respond to the poll, and it's very much subjected to gaming, because people after a while will understand very well what is the right or the wrong answer. Here, we set it up in a way that there is no right or wrong answer, right? So first of all, how you signify this? The decision is led by, let's say, peer in this case, and so you put this stone closer to the part that influenced it more. Making the decision was mostly helped by, let's say, intuition and experience. The decision reflects a situation that is, pretty familiar. The possible consequence of the decision could be manageable. To make the decision, a little bit of collaborative consensus, decisive action was needed. In making this decision, compromise were made on time. And then you have like these other things. So you try to analyze the 4 element, the 4 dimension in the kind of that recall the CVF model. So first of all, you click on it, and then this is context based. So leadership, how was the leadership and decision making process? It was very much facilitating. The orientation was very collaborative and creative. What we consider effective was human development participation and a little bit of innovativeness. What valued us was development. And then you have personal data, and the first time the company can decide certain let's say demographics, but then you only register the first time, and the other times to remember yourself. Then you send, so the decision is registered, and then you have this reporting tool that is showing you like these heat maps that are like a consequence of all the decision taken. So you can basically, like, you see now, this is showing the 4 elements, and you can, for instance, these are the decision the last 4 weeks. If you go decision last 12 weeks, you see it's many more decision. In the last 8 weeks, sorry, in the last 8 weeks is in between. And then you can also, compare the heat maps with the previous period. So you can see, like, if you've done certain things, how the orientation, how the leadership is in the last 4 weeks compared to the 4 weeks before. So you can actually see that if you do certain things, how, the culture, the different elements of the culture shifts. And, if these things are overlapping, you have a very coherent culture, but also, you see this is a progression. So this is probably, if you want to see things move, first of all, you might see the leadership behavior move, because then the leadership can role model the new culture, and then by doing that, shifting what people, what motivates people at work, and then as a consequence, by creating new stories of success and failure, motivate what people consider effective, change what people consider effective at work, which in the end is going to change what people value at work. And then you have other kind of statistics that they can allow you to see about, okay, what is the average speed of decision making, the frequency, who takes the decision, who takes what decision, etc., etc. You can configure this, and you can also, like, filter the dashboard depending on your demographics. So you can see, how the culture is in, for instance, in Germany. Let's say compared to the rest of the whole organization, or how is it in Italy, for instance, and so on and so forth. And this is very important because let you understand where you are. By doing a continuous scan, you can see, like, how the action that you do in the organization, or the safe to fail experiment that you're running, how they shift, how they evolve the organization. And you have also now here, you open the strategy map, and you can see this is like the digital version of this. So you can create your goal that gives the direction. You can also add metrics. And you can add, CSF, we are confirmed success factors, or PSF, which are potential success factors. And maybe for CSF and PSF, you can actually also, align, see what says in the present, for instance. Maybe you have an experiment, and then you can have like an experiment canvas, which allows you to design the experiment and to monitor the experiment. So you can define what you want to learn for the experiment, what is the background, what is the description of the experiment, what will make the experiment successful, and what will make the experiment failing. And then if it's successful, what are the things that you can do to amplify the effect of the experiment throughout the organization? Or if the experiment is failing, what are the things that you have to do to dampen the possible negative effect of the experiment? And actually, around an experiment, you can define experiment teams. And actually, you can also, if you go to the dashboard, actually you can also filter the scanning of the organization, not only according to the demographics. So let's see that we want all, not only according to the demographics, but you can also filter by experiment. So actually you can see, like, okay, how the people that are part of the experiment, how their leadership and orientation and values and culture, in the end, how is this working compared to the rest of the organization? Because if things are changing in the people doing the experiment, and it's not shifting in other parts of the organization, this means that people running the experiment are actually affected by the change. And otherwise, if things are not different, it might argue that even if there's a shift in the culture, it's not depending on the experiment that you have been running. So this is what I wanted to share. And actually, there is actually 11 minutes before the the end of the seminar. Let me check how many questions we have. So yeah, we had some that are answered. We have just one open. So maybe I answered this one, and then if we have time, we can look at the leadership model. So what should be the first step in trying to make the manager buy in and really believe in changing culture? What is your approach? This is from Theodosis. I mean, actually, the approach is that we are trying to educate managers. I mean, managers need to understand this concept, and this is necessary in a way to. This is necessary in a way to can I say, like, to people understand, exactly like the outside in view and so on and so forth. So and to do that, we have created an education program which has 1 day, foundation class, which is really like to help people, to help leadership understand the basic of what we're discussing now. And then, we have 2 days strategic leadership workshop, which are intended to more like senior leaders, which are going deeper into the to some of the principles and really do the things that are most relevant for them. For instance, I mean, the strategic leadership workshop, we are actually working on the strategy map and working, for instance, on identifying identify the value streams. And then we have 2 days operational leadership workshop that are more intended for second, first line leader, which are more involved into the operational stuff. And this is more about like creating experiment, creating improvement teams, and so on and so forth. So like by educating people, educating leaders, we make them understand all this kind of concepts. So that's how we start this. So we start with the foundation class, then possibly if they buy in, we do the organization scan, and then we start with strategic and operational leadership workshop. And on top of that, we have master classes for coaches and consultants who would like to embrace the movement. And if you're interested to know more, go to our website, organicagility.com, and have a look at the program, partner program. And in particular, I'm planning to organize a foundational masterclass in the coming months. And that would be interesting for those of you who are coaches and Scrum Master, if you have any interest in this kind of things happening in Stockholm. So it will be 2 days workshop going deeper into the principles, understanding techniques and tools. For instance, how do you define right streams for the teams and so on, and understanding a little bit of the theory behind them. So we have still some little time. So I would like to have a quick look at the leadership model, and then even if it's 4:30 for those of you who are interested, I will stay more and answer more questions. But if you are busy, then you can leave, and then you will get anyway the recording of the webinar, so you can possibly look at the question and answer part that you have not followed later on. So let's go back quickly to the presentation. So we have created, part of Organic Agility is also a leadership model. And the first question, why a different leadership model? Actually, we have been looking at different leadership models. And, we have also practiced with a lot of them, and we have found that none of them is really satisfying our way of doing things, and it's not even satisfying the Snowden. So some of them are too static. Some of them are actually looking at leadership as a leaders, as a person, more than a leadership as an organization capability. And some of these are based on, like for instance, the great man theory and the trait theory, on the fact that either you are born as a leader or you can't really become a good leader. Others are also talking about leadership that can be learned, but none of them are satisfying, because we realize that actually leadership has actually three dimensions. One is leadership behavior, another part is about the context connected to Canevin, and another one is about the culture. So certain leadership behavior have a meaning in a certain leadership culture, and others not. For instance, if you have a very hierarchical culture and you start really acting as a coaching leader, you will create clash, because people still required to be controlled and led. And if you adopt a non-coherent leadership style, then this might create a tension. So you have partly to evolve the culture before, while changing your leadership style. So actually we identify like 7 different dimensions. One is leader's view, and the other 4 are the follower's view, and the 7th is the leader's image, which is a combination. And by these seven dimension, we end up in 6 leadership behaviors. I mean, for instance, we got a lot of inspiration from Daniel Goleman, because we understood, for instance, that emotional intelligence is very important. And of course, some of the behaviors we have are natural, but I mean, the most, if you want to be a successful leader in your company, whether you are officially a manager or not, official leader or not, is about being able to use your emotional intelligence to adopt a style which is coherent with the specific culture and coherent with the specific context. And when it comes to context, the organic agility also identify like different organizational archetypes. We don't have the time to go through this in details, but I really encourage you to explore them on our website, and you might identify some of these archetypes as like something that you have seen in your experience, and this is kind of the strategic archetype, which you also call like the organic archetype, where leadership is a capability, and the leader, that might be also a different person depending on the context, is more about as a person which like instigate change and catalyze change, and looking at strategic aspects and create a condition for the team and the organization to collaborate in the best possible way. For those of you who are also interested, there is an upcoming Organic Agility conference in Vancouver, beginning of May. And I said, a lot of things you can see on our website. So with that, I'm done with the session. And Marina, would you like to close a little bit, and then we say a little bit more?
I can close the session, and if you want to talk a bit more, so you're welcome. And thank you everyone one more time, and I hope you collected the good takeaways from this webinar, and that you get to experiment with them in your workplace. And after the webinar in a week, or you will receive a link with the webinar recording. So thank you so much, and I hope I see you on the next webinar we will organize. Bye bye.
So whoever wants to stay, I'm going to answer more questions if you want. Okay. So I have so one question from an anonymous person about how do you define the right stream for the teams design organically. And basically, there are like tools that we provide. Some are organic agility, some are our own Agile for Two tools. And usually you start identifying your target customer groups, You can use, for instance, personas to do that, and then you try to understand what are the needs and what is value for this kind of customer groups, and then you try to map, the solution, the product that you have to combine them to something that allows to fulfill those needs and satisfy, solve their problems, the problems of the specific customer group. And then, what are your organizational structure can come as a consequence, as a stable number of teams that are as autonomous as possible to be able to fulfill the need of that specific customer group. Then I have another question from Wolfgang about, are the tools online based or also locally available within a company? Actually, if a company wants to use an organic agility or strategy map, actually we're going to create an instance on our server that is dedicated to the specific customer, and it can be customized depending on the demographics of that specific company. The demographics make sense to them in order to be able to do the analysis they want to do. So yes, it is hosted, but it is like a specific instance for that specific company. And we work in a way that the anonymity of those who report the stories is guaranteed. So the client is only allowed to address to see like the standard report and the charts that I showed you before. It's only us that can go and understand the single story, and that's allow us to do a deeper analysis in case the clients want deeper analysis. So I hope this answered the question. Damir, quite structured and disciplined way for companies to track their cultural states. How many company cards use it thoroughly versus those experimenting with this approach? I would like that. I would say that the current number that I have is that around 20 companies are using organic agility in some kind of form, and at least 12 are using it kind of full-fledged, so to speak. So this is kind of the answer to your question. And then Niklas, is your concept method likewise applicable for agile transformation, big scale as when team level? Actually, this is scalable. It's meant to organization, but I mean, even a team is an organism. So ideally, the same concept is scalable also on a team level. However, we are going to introduce more tools more on the team level soon, like for instance, I mean the team assessment. But I mean, actually, you can use the same principles on any kind of level. The current tools that I show you, nevertheless, might have some scalability need in the sense, and for instance, I mean, in order to have for the organizational scan to be meaningful, I would recommend it to be run in even in a department of an organization with at least 50 people. So that's not very much working on a team level. But if you have a specific need or thing in mind, I really encourage you, Nicholas, to get in touch with me offline, and so that I can understand your specific context better. And then I have a question from Christian. You're using training to change leadership behavior understanding, yet according to adult development training, it is very limited effect. I understand the business case, yet coaching and practice is maybe more effectively. Thanks, Christian, for your feedback. I mean, probably I was not clear enough when I said we use training for people to get an understanding of the concept, but that is not with the training that we have, change leadership behavior. So we actually change the leadership behavior by actually, experimentation and coaching and on-the-job learning. So the training is just to kick off the journey and create the scaffolding that that the 5 principles give the opportunity to. So this is, I would say, it's more like awareness training, and it's more a training to get things rolling. So during the work, and it's not only training, I would say, it's more like workshop. So usually in trainings you are working on case studies. In the workshops, in leadership workshop we're doing at customer side, we are working their actual stuff. So we are working on their actual business goal, their actual strategy, their actual client, their actual product, their actual business lines, and so on and so forth. So it's more like also learning by doing. So I totally agree with you. So the goal of a training, I hope now it's clear, it's to get an understanding, get them buy-in, and kick off the more like the journey towards resilience and organic agility. So there is no more question open. I wonder if there is someone else want to answer more question. Want to ask more question? Otherwise, Christina, I think we can close it up here. Okay, so I close. I thank you very much for your attention and you know, like engagement also in asking the question and answering to the polls. And I really look forward to keep in touch with all of you and to keep, you know, the conversation ongoing and share more even with the Agile Gothenburg community if you want to know more. I would like to thank Christina and Sari and the whole Marina and Sari and the whole Agile community for this opportunity, and have a nice evening.